we keep pointing out that the powerful are supporting these riots, that corporations are supporting people who, Black Lives Matter, a Marxist organization that would destroy Amazon.com, and yet Amazon.com is sending me, if you liked William Wordsworth, you'll love White Fragility. They're peddling this stuff to me. Netflix peddling this stuff to me, even though Black Lives Matter is an avowedly Marxist organization that would destroy Netflix, that would destroy Amazon.com. So why is it they support this? Well, there's a wonderful, wonderful op-ed today in the Wall Street Journal, one of the best op-eds of the year. It's by Orrin Hatch, obviously the former senator from Utah, and he now has the Orrin Hatch Foundation. And he talks about the fact that we are living in an information revolution, which he says is arguably more disruptive than Gutenberg's invention of the printing press. Before Gutenberg, one narrative of reality predominated Western society. By democratizing access to the written word, the press overthrew Rome's monopoly on ideas and allowed competing interpretations to proliferate. This is why they burned people at the stake for translating the Gospels. It put the truth into the individual's hands and said, oh, you have a right to interpret this through your inner light, right? So he says the printing press took Europe from the Middle Ages to the modern era. It precipitated the Reformation, the Renaissance, and the American founding by democratizing information. He says now the internet gives nearly everyone his own virtual printing press. A single social media post can reach millions in seconds. With so many competing sources of information, it's no wonder shared reality is fractured. Just as Gutenberg's invention threatened to undermine the religious authority of the time, the internet threatens to undermine our secular clerisy. The journalists, academics, and policymakers who make up the expert class in America and elsewhere in the West. And think about this. Think how often you hear Republicans being attacked for not following the experts. It's science. And of course, it's only one science, and it's only one kind of expert. It's only the experts who preach fear. It's only the science about, the climate is going to fall on our heads. It's not the science about babies in the womb or the differences between men and women. Don't pay attention to that science. It is the religion of the clerisy. It is the theory that keeps the powerful in power. Just like the Catholic Church had a domination, a monopoly on the truth that was broken by the Reformation. Now, this secular clerisy, the secular elite, is losing its grip on power. And that's what you're watching. You're not watching people rioting in the streets for justice. I know they keep telling you that because they're the elite. You're watching people who think, who knows, they think they're being anarchists, they think they're being hip, they think they're being cool, but they are the tools of the powerful. They're the tools of the powerful fighting the spirit of truth. So he says the internet has, this is Orrin Hatch again, he says the internet has destroyed the expert class, the monopoly of truth of the expert class in America and elsewhere in the West. He says for decades they have served an important gatekeeping role, wielding tremendous power over public opinion. But the internet makes it possible to circumvent the gatekeepers. The gatekeepers' desperate attempts to slow the unfolding revolution and keep control are proving downright draconian. The spirit of the Inquisition is alive and well in today's cancel culture. The objective is not to root out non-believers in the church, but ideological heretics in newsrooms and universities. These institutions are supposed to be bastions of free speech, but in 2020, any journalist or scholar who strays from progressive orthodoxy is ripe for cancellation. It's really interesting when you hear them talk about cancel culture. They say there's no cancel culture. It's just you're being paid back for the bad things you say. Well, if you go back to Robespierre, the guy who invented the terror until he was in fact guillotined himself, he said the springs of popular government and revolution are at once virtue and terror. Virtue without which terror is fatal. Terror without which virtue is powerless. Terror is nothing other than justice, prompt, severe, inflexible. You're not being beheaded. You're just being held responsible for the things you say. It is therefore an emanation. Terror is an emanation of virtue. It is not so much a special principle as it is a consequence of the general principles of democracy applied to our country's most urgent needs. So you hear all that voice, all those people saying the terror in the street is democracy. It's Robespierre. He says, it has been said that terror is the principle of despotic government. Does your government therefore resemble despotism? Yes, as the sword that gleams in the hands of the heroes of liberty resembles that with which the henchmen of tyranny are armed. So in other words, it's not the fact that we're killing people, it's why we're killing people. It's good when you kill people. Orrin Hatch, you should go read it. He basically says we have to reform our universities. But that But that argument that it's not, that terror is good if it's in the hands of virtue, overrides. Remember, I talked about begging the question. It begs the question of who is in charge of virtue. And I would say it's the individual conscience, the man who stands up and makes his argument and is not afraid to face all comers. It is not simply the clerisy unleashing terror on our cities to enforce its version of the truth against the individual conscience.